Hello and welcome to It's All Kicking Off, another football roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilbourn from What Culture Football, Adam Clery and Simon Gallagher here to discuss another burning football issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to What Culture Football on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily football podcasts. But gents, we are gathered here today because Premier League football is about to return.
Thank God.
And seeing as we've had a few games, 4 so far this season, each team has played, I want to know your predictions for the final 2019-2020 Premier League table.
That's very handy, that, because that's what I brought with me. Those the only notes I brought are the final Premier League table, although it's printed out in double. It looks, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but it's printed out drunk. So I'm just going to show everybody at home that. I don't know why I printed this.
Oh, you're going to give away answers?
I had 2 goes at this, and it's all just, it's horrendous.
Adam Clery, let's start with yours for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
First off, most obviously, who do you have as Premier League champions?
I have Manchester City as Premier League champions, but I will hold my hands up and I will say Liverpool have started a lot better than I thought they were going to. I thought they were going to have a big hangover from the amount of football they played last year, from how small their squad was relative to, say, Man City, and, of course, all their big players being away across the summer. I think they've started a lot better and a lot brighter than, I'll hold my hands up, than I expected them to, but I still think over a 38-game season, that is going to cost them eventually. We've already seen they've not kept a clean sheet yet this season. With Alisson being out, they look way, way shakier at the back as a result of that. That's just one injury. 2 or 3 of those start getting across the team. I know Alisson's back, is he, the next couple of weeks?
Must be getting close, yeah.
You're getting close to coming back, but that's one injury, and that really did take them off balance. Southampton will feel very unlucky not to have taken points off them. Yes, they've got a 100% record, but they don't look like the juggernaut they did last season. I think that will slow and slow and slow as the season goes on. And Man City, they've dropped 2 points off Spurs having the most anomalous draw ever. 2 shots, one of which is a huge deflection, and they somehow get out of there with a 2-2. I think Man City will go on and on and on and on. Strength.
Yeah,
I think Man City
generally accepted that Man City probably going to be Premier League champions. Do you agree?
I do. I think they get better, and Liverpool tend to fade right at the end of the season, and they can't really afford to do that when Man City or Man City.
I will say, in fairness to Liverpool last season, they did not fade at the end of the season. They just simply, they couldn't do anything other than put 3 points on the board, and that was, they needed to put 3.2 points on the board every week. I will say, though, if Liverpool get knocked out with the Champions League early, if for whatever reason they have a disastrous group stage, or there's an upset in the second round, if they go out early in the Champions League and Man City is still in it, I may reframe my prediction to Liverpool doing it.
I would say the same.
The sheer amount of games Man City will have to play and Liverpool being able to focus on the league might be enough to address that balance. Maybe.
Got Man City top of yours?
Yes, but I agree with all of that. I think Liverpool coming second is because they've played a lot of games last season and their summer was busy for their players. And it's hard to keep it up. I mean, they're great and they're really good to watch, but the pace that they play at, it's bound to. They haven't got a massive squad
Every single player they had last season was in form for at least 2/3 of the thing. Salah played. I know people say Salah wasn't quite the player he was that first season, but he still got an insane number of goals. Firmino stepped up a little bit. Mane looked really good. Robertson and Alexander-Arnold were excellent. Alisson was brilliant. Van Dijk was brilliant. Gomez, when he was available, was brilliant. Matip came in and was brilliant. Every single player, and I'll get the Spurs, they've kind of got a similar problem. They all played at their best or even a little bit above themselves, and you need to be able, for Liverpool to win the league this year, you need to conceivably look at them and think, if they don't play as well as that, if they drop off 10-15%, could they still beat Man City? And the answer is no.
Yeah, I think they're going to drop some points as well because of VAR, because Salah likes to dive a little bit, doesn't he, sometimes? And I think they might, but it's true. They might lose some points when they're shaved off, when they don't get the penalties that they might have got if people weren't paying as close attention.
Both,
same as Spurs.
Yes, both very sensible decisions, putting Man City as top for obvious reasons.
Which is why
I've got Liverpool winning the Premier League. The eternal optimist.
It could happen. It could happen.
Yeah, I mean, this.
It's literally only those two, though.
Yes, I should explain. This table is the table I predicted at the start of the season before any games were played. Aside from my tweak between 3rd and 4th. But I'm inclined to agree with what you're saying about Man City. They just seem unstoppable. Having said that, I'm always the eternal optimist as a Chesterfield fan. And
they're not going to win the league.
They're definitely not going to win anything. And I think, like we said last season, if they could have swapped Man City and Liverpool with the titles that they won, or the trophies that they won, I should say, then that would have happened. And I think Man City, yes, will be concentrating on attempting to win the league, but the most important thing for them is winning the Champions League this season. Yeah. And I think there is the odd chance, if Liverpool play as good as, if not better, as they did last season, that Liverpool could just snatch it, which Man City won't be that bothered about.
It's not about Man City being bothered about it, I think. I do believe this will be Guardiola's last year, certainly, if not his last season, his last full season at Manchester City. And I think, given the resources he's had and the squad he's built and how good that team is, back-to-back Premier League titles is great for them. But I think if he doesn't win the Champions League with that side, I think he'll probably look at that as a bit of a failure. So I can genuinely see him, as the buck stops to him in terms of squad selection. If they're in the latter stages of the Champions League, I think that's where their time and effort will go. That's where their resources will go. That's where the full strength side will go, and maybe that'll open up a bit of a gap for them.
Yeah, you can say that their second team is strong, but if they're not playing matches together, then it doesn't really matter. You can't just expect them to come in and win the league.
So we've all obviously got Liverpool and Man City first or second. Who makes up the rest of your top four?
I've still got Chelsea in the top four. I know they've had a very, very indifferent start to the season, but I think if you look at what they've been doing well, I think there's real good optimism there for Chelsea fans. I think Mount's come in, looks fantastic. I think Pulisic, that's the correct one, isn't it? We've had this list.
Pulisic, yeah.
He looks like an excellent player. And I just think Rudiger's going to come back. He's really going to strengthen that back line. They've not been able to get Kante on the pitch regularly, but when they do, they look far more solid. I just think they will sort that out at the back eventually, and they've got goals in that side. Tammy Abraham finally looks he looks like a revelation for them up front at the minute. And I just think when you look at the other sides, I think they could, after a bad start, still build into something approaching consistent or approaching dangerous, and I think that'll get them into the top four. I do now have Arsenal as finishing third. I've bumped Spurs way out.
Interestingly, so do I.
We all have Arsenal as third. Arsenal were fourth in my pre-season predictions. I've swapped them around with Tottenham for my top four. They are third as well. I think that comeback they had against Tottenham, obviously they didn't go on and win the game in the North London derby. They looked great. And even in pre-season, I was looking at on paper who they've got and comparing them to, like you said, your Chelsea's, your Man Uniteds, even your Tottenhams now, and thinking they've strengthened far more than more than Liverpool have strengthened.
Yeah, I just think that's the thing. It's goals that are going to do this for you at the end of the day, which is why I've got Chelsea in there, because they are scoring goals. They've got no problem scoring goals. They just need to sort it out at the back, and it's goals that will get you up that end of the table. And aside from Mane, Firmino, and Salah, and of course Aguero and whoever the hell, Sterling, Sane, whoever the hell is Man City want to play, Arsenal's attacking options are they're crazy. Like David Luiz at the back is high banter. I think
he'll score goals as well.
He's another one who score goals. Like I think they've tried to make the side more press proof. I think by the looks of it, they've got players who can play out from the back. Like Emery clearly last year had a problem with getting the ball from the back of the team to the front. He used to skip out the midfield entirely, but now it looks like they're going to be confident. Like, and I'm going to say his name wrong as well. We call it is Caballo. That what we're going with?
I think so. Yeah.
Not Cabellos, obviously. No. We're going with Caballo.
Just call him that.
He looked fantastic at getting the ball deep and moving it through the team and bringing so many other players in. Liverpool squashed him to death by putting in that clip from him being in his own corner flag. They forced a player who was that good at playing out into just lumping a ball into his own box. Which, to be fair, if that had got all the way across to the fullback, would have been heralding as a genius bit of football, but in the end it didn't work out. I just think Liverpool could be... Arsenal could be really good to watch this year.
Yeah,
and I just
absolutely.
think other teams will drop off, will have runs where they're not scoring goals and they're trying to find other ways to win games. I just think Arsenal will score goals.
I even think the gap between second and third will be smaller this year than it was last year. Because of Arsenal.
Maybe.
So
I don't mean very close. I just mean a little bit. There'll be a little bit gained.
You've got Arsenal and Chelsea as third and fourth. I've got Arsenal and Tottenham. That's literally the only tweak I've made to this when I did.
Thing is, I've taken Tottenham out because from what I've seen of them at the start of the season, it looks like this project that they've had there, the Pochettino's had, looks like it's coming to a close. It's not ending particularly well. Eriksen, by the looks of it, wanted to be off, but has been convinced to stay for another year, but he knows he's now going to leave on a free at the end of the season. They've had the problems with Vertonghen at the back. I think even Pochettino thinks he might not be there come the end of the season. Like if Man United don't pick up and they get rid of Solskjaer, I think Pochettino will be there straight away. I think the Real Madrid job could open for him. I think he's almost planning his exit strategy now, but not even from a sense of like, where do I want this club to be? I think he looks at it and he thinks, you know what, I really tried with all the resources there. We built an excellent team, and I'm not going to have anything to show for it. Me sticking around another 12 months isn't going to change that.
I've put Tottenham fourth because I don't see any other sides that are better than them. You know, Man United and Chelsea's in the league, but I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about yours. You've got Leicester finishing fourth.
Because I think they've done some. I actually thought Wolves might press for fourth this season, but admittedly they've only lost one game, but they've drawn 3, and if you that becomes an epidemic if you start drawing loads of games, and that's slightly worrying. But Leicester, they've got a lot of goals in them as long as Jamie Vardy stays on the pitch, but they also, as much as it pains me to say it, they made an astute signing in Ayoze Perez, because even when he's bad, he scores goals, which is what we saw at Newcastle for. Like,
I never saw him being bad. I saw him scoring loads of goals.
Sorry, even when we were bad, he scored goals. Yeah.
But yeah, Leicester do look strong this season.
And Tielemans in midfield is
he's one of the best buys of the season. He's a great player.
And I think he'll make the difference for them. I just think everybody else is going backwards or is building towards a new project. And Leicester have sort of clicked into having the team that they...
Leicester very much look like the new Spurs to me, although they've done it by spending money, where Spurs did it by just never spending any money. I've got them in 5th and 6th respectively, but I could quite easily have swapped them over. I think Spurs' starting 11 is a lot stronger than Tottenham's, but I think Spurs' starting 11 is a lot stronger than Leicester's, but I think Leicester they've got a better plan. They're clearly at the start of a project rather than at the end of one. Yeah. I could see them swapping places across the course of the season, but I just think 1 to 11, Spurs are probably still a bit stronger. But again, Spurs are another one like Liverpool where you put 3 or 4 injuries into that squad. I don't really see... They have strengthened, and I was on this at the start of the season saying I thought they bought very well, but looking at how, sort of towards the end of its lifespan this squad looks like being and how unsettled a few of them look. They clearly wanted to get rid of Danny Rose. He stayed. They clearly wanted a replacement for Kieran Trippier. They didn't get one. Spurs fans on Twitter are saying there's a crisis at fullback at the club at the minute, which I didn't think was a thing that could ever possibly exist. But yeah, I think I could see Leicester and Spurs ending up with pretty much the exact same season, but Leicester fans being delighted with it and Spurs fans being disappointed.
You convinced me. I put Leicester down in 7th pre-season. I don't really know why I did that, because They've
got no distractions either, which I know you said you could have put Wolves there, but I think Wolves fans, and I've said this, if they finish 14th, 15th, be delighted with it. If you get a good run in the Europa League, get to the quarters, the semis, hell, maybe even the final, are good enough to do it. Be delighted with that. Have a transitional season. Focus on getting a big European adventure out of it rather than the league and then come back next year.
It almost relegated us, but that Europa League season was amazing.
It was great.
We didn't win a single league game.
We plummeted down the table, but it was loads of fun. Look at Burnley. Yeah. They got in. They were out fairly quickly, and it did unsettle them, but they dropped right off towards the bottom of the league as well, and I think Wolves will take a hit.
We've both put Wolves at 10th. Whereabouts have you got them?
I have Wolves at 7th now, only because of the start of the season. I think Chelsea, Tottenham, Wolves and Man U are all sort of interchangeable because they all have their issues and they all have distractions, but like...
Just on the Wolves thing, I've got them in 10th, purely because I think of all the sides that have got aspirations this year and have spent a lot of money, they've got the most on their plate. And of the entire rest of the league, they're still, even with the Europa League games, the best side out of that entire bottom half of the table. West Ham, nothing to distract them, spent a lot of money, they're going to want to do something. Everton look like they're finally pulling a cohesive side together, really strong at the back.
They've got Michael Keane.
But they've got more. Everton have got more clean sheets in the calendar year than everybody but Man City and Liverpool.
This is true.
So they're not they've got Pickford as well, and still they're pulling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Wolves having those players where they're Pickfords and Michael Keane's where they'll implode. I know they've got a lot on their plate, but they could also go out in January and spend 300 million without batting an eyelid.
One of the interesting ones that we all kind of disagree on is Man United's place.
I've got Man United in 7th, but I would quite readily... See, I haven't got them interchangeable with Chelsea, Tottenham and Leicester. I've got them interchangeable with Everton, West Ham and Wolves. Personally, I think it's genuinely commendable what Solskjaer's trying to do there. I think he's gotten rid of Lukaku, he's gotten rid of Sanchez. He's got a really, really good squad of young players who genuinely want to play for Man United in that side. Daniel James, Rashford, Martial, McTominay, like even some of the ones that aren't rated, Wan-Bissaka, Luke Shaw. There's a squad there that could, in 18 months, maybe 2 seasons, really be on the cusp of something. If they had, let's say, a handful of more experienced players, they make a couple of very, very good expensive buys, that could be a really, really good side. And if you look like Liverpool might drop off in a year or two, Guardiola might leave City and they go into a transitional period for whatever. Chelsea, who knows how they're going to recover from the transfer ban. There could be a really good opportunity for Man United to get back to the top of the league, or at least near the top of the league, in a season or two. It's just whether or not they can genuinely stomach finishing somewhere between getting entirely out of Europe to build towards having that, or whether they're going to get itchy trigger fingers. They're going to abandon this project after what will be a painful 12 months, I think, for them. And they go, right, no, we can't be playing Daniel James. We can't be playing Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Let's just get expensive players in again. And they go out and they buy another Sanchez and another Lukaku.
Yeah, I put United 5th. I think I did that purely because I knew they were going to finish higher than Chelsea in my book, but didn't really consider the teams below them. And, the points you put forward about Leicester, I think possibly I was influenced by the fact that, pre-season I was looking at them going, well, who knows? The signings that they made, I know they're losing players, etc., but it's Man United. They always kind of can pull
I'll put it to you this way, right? Just looking at your table, you've got Man United in 5th, right? Let's say it was Man United versus Leicester this weekend. Who would you fancy to win that match?
I'd probably a draw.
Probably a draw. What if it's at Leicester?
Yeah,
Leicester.
Good point.
Man United versus Everton this weekend at Goodison Park. Who do you really fancy in that game?
I always fancy Everton in those games.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
it's a fair point. Yeah.
Man United versus West Ham this weekend at the London Stadium. Who do you really fancy?
Slightly biased because my dad's a West Ham fan, but it's a good point.
Even Wolves,
yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot. Crystal Palace at the minute, to be fair, I think could turn them over. Oh, look at that! They did at Old Trafford. Like, they're not one-on-one. They're not as good as these teams, and you're really asking them to put a consistent run. And you got to remember, when teams smell blood against big sides, when they're going through those years where they're not quite what they were.
When teams started going to Old Trafford, like when Moyes was there and what have you.
Well, we used to be the specialists, isn't it, against Man U?
Yeah. And Chelsea, to be fair. When your Brightons, your Southamptons, your Burnleys, your Villas, your Palaces, your Bournemouths, your Watfords, your Newcastles, everybody else, when they play one of those big sides, so the crowd are going to be up for it, but they really think, do you know what, this isn't one of these sides that we need to fear. Like, the effort goes through the roof. You know what I mean? And genuinely, I think Man United are going to have I think their away record this year is going to be horrible.
Yeah. I totally agree in the idea of them in 2 years' time maybe being amazing if they stick with it, because their under-23 team has some legitimately really good players.
Yeah, the players they want to bring
in the
through
Premier League.
Excellent.
But it's whether they do get itchy trigger fingers and start bringing in daft signings to cover that.
Let's move on then from...
Can I just say one final thing on Man United? The term of going through the pain, as I think Gary Neville said, but he said it during Van Gaal being there, because they dropped straight off the boil when Ferguson left, and they've now gone through Moyes, they've gone through Van Gaal, they've gone through Mourinho, and I think a lot of Man United fans will feel like we've already been through these painful years. We're Man United, we're still one of the biggest clubs in the world, we've still got huge spending power. Why aren't we in this conversation with Liverpool and Man City? And to ask a fan base that's so used to that success now the painful years start, now you've got to drop into mid-table to get back to where you were. I think if I was the chairman of that football club, I don't know how I'd approach it, because there will be discontent, there will probably be protests, and I think if they're going to turn on someone who is as beloved at the club as Ollie is...
Well, that's the only way
it's so difficult.
You deal with it. You hire Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but they've already done that, so it's sort of... It's like he would be the one at the end of the pain.
I think that's what Chelsea are doing with Lampard to an extent. Totally, they know they're going to go through a painful 12 months, 18 months. Because even when the transfer ban gets lifted, you've then got to start reassembling the side, and who knows what state it's going to be in by then. So they've got somebody... They're doing the exact same project, I think, but I think they've got a better squad to begin with. I think Man United would kill for Kante, and they would kill for their young players to be Hudson-Odoi and Barkley and Loftus-Cheek and Abraham. I think Chelsea doing the exact same thing as Man United, but A, they're starting with more goodwill, and B, they're doing it with a better side. And C, they've not had the upheaval. They've not got their best player being a one-to-way disruptive influence. They've not sold 3 or 4 of their best players. Yeah. They've only sold 1.
Yeah. Let's move on to the opposite end of the table and talk about the teams you see getting relegated. Si, start us off. Who are your bottom 3?
It pains me to say it, but I think Sheffield United, as much as I've enjoyed seeing their football so far, it's like I said at the start of the season, they're going to be very brave and stick to their game plan, and it's not going to work out that well because it doesn't work in the Premier League. They'll entertain themselves to losing, basically. And then I've got Brighton, because they deserve it slightly because of the Chris Hughton thing. But I also don't think they're a particularly good team. I think that they're limited. And I still think Aston Villa, because they have done the same thing with Sheffield United, where they've been quite impressive. But they've made 807 signings this summer. And you have to gel. And even if you can do some interesting things at the start of the season, I just don't see it working across the entire year.
I agree.
I think Norwich are better.
I agree with you about Sheffield United to an extent, but I think we tend to see now, with the difference between the bottom half of the Premier League and the top half of the Championship, or maybe the top 3 or 4 teams in the Championship, not being that much. You get a team that comes up, doesn't spend a lot of money, doesn't disrupt its side, keeps its style, keeps its tactics exactly the same. Norwich are doing it as well to an extent. Because they're brand new and the gulf in class isn't that much, they catch a lot of teams out. Like Crystal Palace should be turning over Sheffield United with one leg tied behind their back, but it was just they don't know what that system is. This Sheffield United side is really cohesive. They're really together. They play well together, and I think we've seen it before. You kind of coast by on that for a few months anyway. Probably maybe up until Christmas, you can pick up a few surprise wins. You'll catch a lot of these bottom half teams out. You get a lot of points on the board before you get figured out. And I think Sheffield United are going to be that team this year that does that. And I agree, sooner or later, that overlapping centre-backs thing's going to be an absolute disaster for them.
It'll backfire.
But I think by that point, they're probably going to be all right for this season. Next season, they've either got to spend big or they'll drop straight back down. I think they will go down next season. Like Huddersfield. Well, Huddersfield were the best example of this. They came up. They didn't spend anything, really. They didn't throw money around. I think they broke the transfer record, but they didn't massively disrupt the side. Teams were like, I'm not really sure how you play against this lot. They're quite a bit different. They are quite rough, but they still keep the ball on the ground quite well. And that got them through, the first part of that season. And even though they were tailed off massively towards the end, they'd done enough. And I think Sheffield United will do the same with that. I was actually going to say Norwich will do that this season. But then I looked at where they are in the league. And I know it's literally only 2 points between them and Sheffield United, but their thing is not having a particularly balanced or particularly innovative system. It's having a centre forward who converts all their chances really well. And that's not that hard to figure out. You know what I mean? That's not something the teams are going to spend months and months and months trying to work their way around. They will just stick an extra man on him. And I think in 3 or 4 weeks, he'll still score goals, but I think they're going to be so reliant on him doing that, they're going to really, really struggle. So I've got Norwich, Villa, and Southampton.
Southampton, yeah.
And Southampton purely because I don't see where the goals are coming from.
Yeah, they're one of those teams who you can't. I've sort of included them as staying up purely because they're a Premier League staple now, but there's no real justification for that. My bottom 3 are Sheffield United, bottom. I think I do agree.
They got the bottom.
Well, I do.
The bottom agrees with me.
Do agree that they are. They're playing well. Again, this was done before the start of the season, but I thought they were going to do this. I thought they were going to play well, get some decent results early on in the season. And I think, it's going to change, and there's going to be one of those horrible graphs where it's like, first half of the season, 20 points. Second half of the season, 7 points or something.
I think January's one of the... It's key for them, but I think it's possibly the worst because they've spent all their money in the summer on one striker who is not very good, let's be honest. And if they get to January and they're sort of 15th, let's say, but everybody's quite bunched together, which is probably likely because it's what happens in this league, then they might go out and spend they might go and buy Harry Redknapp signings, but
Nico Cranshaw.
Exactly. But 3 years after he would have signed them. It'd be great to see.
Yeah.
And I just think that's where they'll get found out.
My other bottom 3 are Norwich and Brighton, kind of for the same reason.
The thing is, I know Brighton have had a very mixed start to the season, but I think they have spent really well. The kind of players they've got in look perfectly suited to the kind of way they want to play. And apologies, Brighton fans, I forget the name of the manager, but he looks, although we are annoyed as Newcastle fans that they did our boy Chris Hughton dirty like that.
I'm not even that big a fan of Chris Hughton, I just think it was just wrong. Anyway.
But anyway, I think they've probably got enough to be a Premier League staple now. I think they are going to get goals at the top end of the pitch, whereas I look at Southampton and I think, good side. Good side, but I don't think they're going to score enough goals to stay up.
I've got Southampton just staying up, along with Newcastle. As I said in pre-season, there are going to be 3 worse teams than Newcastle. You slightly more optimistic?
Well, because I'm slightly an idiot about Newcastle, but I also think individuals in teams like Newcastle change a lot of things. We have... I hope he stops doing it for the international sides, but in Fabian Schär, we have one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League in terms of footballing, being creative.
Not defending though.
But maybe not defending. But then we've got like Lejeune and Lascelles who do that. But he still is a pretty good defender. And then if Joelinton plays as well as he did against Spurs,
If he can chip it, and don't get me wrong, I think from what we've seen so far, his overall plays really good. Like even in the games where he's looked quite impotent in front of goal, he has still made the play really, really well. And I think when Saint-Maximin gets his feet going,
he's the key. Yeah,
I think there's other players in that side who can get you goals. And I think if your centre forward's playing well without scoring, that's a massive boon. And I think that side, we saw in the Spurs game, I just think that side that Rafa's set up in that system and drilled in that system hasn't changed much across the back line or in midfield. I think that is almost solid enough to stay up without him, just to simply remember what he used to...
Yeah, it would be, like as much as it would be Steve Bruce's finest moment, it would also be Rafa's legacy.
I think as well, like
to Rafa as well.
Keeping Isaac Hayden was a big thing because he's a really solid presence in midfield. Keeping Sean Longstaff was a great move if he can be used right. As long as he keeps Shelvey out the side, who just for all he can do things that no other player in that squad can do, and was for a while the only player who scored a goal for Newcastle.
Never looks like he wants to.
This team, he's just. I think when you're that bad and you're going to be that far down the league, and every goal is going to be so precious because you're never going to be 2 or 3-0 ahead with this Newcastle side. Every goal is going to be so precious. You need everybody to know what their job is and to stick to it and to work really, really hard. And for all I think Shelvey is a very talented footballer and can do things that no one else in that squad can do with a football, there are times where he's just going to have his hands on his shoulders and he's going to be looking around wondering what to do. And I just think you can't have a passenger.
No, I agree.
Don't get me wrong, I really like Bruce's idea of trying to have a 3 in midfield, of putting him in there as a passenger with Hayden and Longstaff, because then you sort of do accommodate that and you can still have that solidity, but then you really do isolate your centre forward.
I mean, it works. The good thing about Newcastle, and the reason why I think we might get 12th, all things being well, is that we have players who aren't playing at full capacity who could be a lot better. Almiron being one of them. Alan Saint-Maximin isn't even in the team. Longstaff in particular is off the boil, but if all of those 4 are playing around Shelvey, then the luxury justifies itself, and he can pass the balls out to the wide players who are both incredibly quick, and that's what suits him. He needs those players. He can't do anything else with them, or he hits them up to Joelinton, who knocks it onto them, and it works, but it's all on paper and it's all based on optimism.
I will say as well, the one thing Newcastle have got going for them is they've got pace in abundance this season.
Totally loads
and
of it,
if you look at the sides that are going to be in and around them at the bottom part of the league, they're not the quickest. No. I think you can sort of discount Crystal Palace. I think they'll probably be all right. They've had a bizarrely astonishing 2019. Wasn't there 2019 league table something like the 3rd or 4th or something ridiculous? I know they're 4th in the actual league as well, but I think if you sort of discount them, they have got pace. But if you look at all the teams around them, it's not something that maybe Watford have got a bit, but
I don't know what's going on with them, honestly. They were absolutely terrible.
I think they'll just get their traditional new manager bounce, and I think they'll be all right, coasting back into mid-table.
New old manager.
It's old, yeah. It's Flores, isn't it? We've got Crystal Palace in the same place, I agree. I think Zaha might be an issue when he goes in January.
If he goes in January, I think they're going to struggle because if Crystal Palace get an offer in January, they are basically asking the club, do you want to seriously risk going down for this sum of money? Because they are so dependent on him getting the ball and moving it up the other end of the pitch. Not even so much his end product. Yeah. I know he does score goals, he does chip in with assists, but they're so reliant on him moving the ball from defence to attack. And if he goes, like Andros Townsend, maybe you could say, does that, although not as well. Their entire style of play is give the ball to Zaha and he runs it up the field. And, they've got other players that contribute with the goals and the assists and whatnot. But, I remember Newcastle, under, McLaren, it was just, we need to get the ball to Sissoko because he will literally run it from the back of the pitch to the front.
Even if he did nothing.
Even if he loses it when it's up there, at least it's up there and it takes the pressure off. I think they're so reliant on Zaha to do that. Hodgson would have to have a completely separate way of playing if he left.
Or enough points on the board.
On the board.
That's the thing. If they go into the start of December with a lot of points on the board, and if you're Man U and you're 8th, you look at him and think, we could get him back for, it doesn't even matter how much money because it's Man U and they've still got Man U money, then if they can convince Palace to do the deal before January, basically, and get him in right at the start of January. That's the only way it can happen, because Palace need the entire month to then spend the money.
In fairness to Zaha as well, because there'll be so much written about, if Palace have a bad run of form, there'll be so much written about head being turned and distracted. I think he's been really professional about all this. He came out right at the start of the transfer window and said he wanted to go. But he didn't get his move. He didn't force it through. He didn't try and get an awkward like Bayern Munich move or something after the transfer window was shut. He's kept his mouth shut. He's done his job. And whatever happens with it, they owe him big time. I think the best case scenario for Palace is that Chelsea want him.
Yeah.
That's the best case scenario, because they'll definitely keep him to the end of the season. He'll work his arse off because he's a solid pro. So we'll see. I would just like to say, just to round all this off, I've got after Palace in 11th and Sheffield United in 16th. The one thing we haven't talked about is just sort of my.
Yeah, if you're a fan of
and I've got Bournemouth, Watford, Brighton, Burnley, and the reason I've got Watford in the middle of all that is just because I didn't want 3 teams starting with B all in a row.
I did that.
I thought it looked lazy.
I put Burnley and Bournemouth, and I thought I can't put them two together because they sound very similar.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Watford or Bournemouth, and you're wondering why we haven't mentioned them, they're in that gap between sort of 10th and 15th.
I think they're both good enough. I've got 13th and 14th for them. I think they're both good enough. I think
For who?
they'll be fine.
Who in
Premier
13th?
League. Burnley in 13th, Bournemouth in 14th. I think.
14th or 15th.
Oh, I think Burnley will be fine because they've got.
Wait, where have you got Burnley?
13th.
Oh, I thought we all had Burnley in 15th, very
No.
specifically.
They've got Ashley Barnes, who I think is genuinely very good, and I think he might go in January, but he'll probably score a few goals before.
Where would he go though?
I think
the kind
I thought
of
Chelsea were going to buy him.
China.
Yeah,
He's the kind of player who it would be worth so much to Burnley that the only clubs who could afford him wouldn't know how to play him.
120 million.
Genuinely, the only role available to him in that top 6 is filling in for what Llorente did for Spurs, just coming off being a taller, stronger Harry Kane and not really fitting the system at all. I think he's an excellent player.
I think he's great. Yeah,
But I think he's one of these players who is excellent because he plays in a system that gets the absolute best out of him.
I mean, we've seen it before with Ricky Lambert and
Southampton, yeah.
the other one,
The other Ricky Lambert.
the similar sort of striker, great big lad, Grant Holt.
Grant Holt,
yes.
Wrestler,
Grant
professional.
Yeah, another one of those. If players like that can be very effective, and I hope when Andy Carroll comes back from Newcastle, he can occasionally be used in a similar nightmare to defend sort of mode.
Yeah, I hope so too. I was just going to say, if the Andy Carroll experiment works off, then Newcastle might buy Ashley Barnes to replace him next season. Let's hope.
He's one of those players that's a very specific type of footballer, and if you're going to play very specific football, you can maximise their abilities. And teams now aren't really set out to defend against that kind of thing. You hardly get centre forwards who are
Peter Crouch
huge bruising.
Could still come on. Not now, obviously, because he's retired, but he could still come on a couple of seasons ago, and defenders could not do anything with him because he was just such a big, different unit.
Just a throwback to a different way of playing, and
Chris Woods is the same.
Defenders aren't drilled week in, week out now. Right, defend this cross and second ball.
They just don't have anybody.
No.
They can you stand in for him. You're 7'6".
Not teams try to move you around and exploit the space now, and thus defenders are experts at not getting moved around and making sure the space isn't there. Well, they're supposed to be anyway. So lumping a 6 foot whatever lad in the middle of it all, he's not moving me around. He's literally moving me around like this.
He's just stood on the penalty spot.
I have to say that Andy Carroll is another reason why I've got Newcastle 12th. Again, it's based on optimism.
I just want one goal. I want one goal out of him all season. I want it to be
Gallagher.
a late, either a winner or to salvage something. That's all I want, and it's a success.
And his knee explodes as he's celebrating.
Right, these are our Premier League predictions. Let us know yours in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can tweet them to us as well at WhatCultureFC. Watch there, follow all 3 of us. You can follow Simon Gallagher at
Cy Gallagher.
You can follow Adam Clery at
Adam Clery, Clery.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. I said you can follow us all at WhatCultureFC. And make sure you subscribe to What Culture Football, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily football podcasts. This has been It's All Kicking Off. My thanks to Simon and to Adam. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.